Miss Basolka again, and in this video I wanted to start by talking about topics that are verboten. Now, in general, I'm a big believer that you can write a great personal essay about any topic that you choose. I've seen the essays that prove this over and over again. But over the years, I've compiled a very, very short list of topics you should not write about. Now, maybe this year I'll read one great essay about one of these topics and I'll have to take it off the list, but honestly, I'm not holding my breath. So number one, anything dishonest. Don't lie on your college applications. Don't exaggerate or shade the truth or use any of the other euphemisms for lying. Not only will you not respect yourself, but you'll get in the habit of assuming that other people are lying about things, and then you'll never have a real relationship because you'll always assume dishonesty on both sides, and that is no way to go through life. Number two, romantic relationships. This is a picture of my husband and me, kissing and making googly eyes at each other. You know why I'm not going to show it to you? Because you don't want to see it. And I'm not going to disparage high school relationships. Sometimes those relationships develop people in very fundamental ways. Sometimes people even marry their college or their high school sweethearts. But for your college essay, I'm going to say it's TMI. Number three, bodily functions. Now, maybe you think this goes without saying, but I have had to talk people out of this one. A few years ago, I had a student who will remain forever completely anonymous come to talk to me about an essay where the opening scene was of him sitting on the toilet. Now, when we talked about the essay, albeit somewhat awkwardly at first, what he was really trying to get at was his obsession with math patterns. Math patterns? Okay. Bodily functions? No. Now, there is a small asterisk on this one. There are some students who want to write about how they dealt with a particular medical condition, but your essay should focus on how it developed you and not the gruesome details of all the symptoms, which you probably have a much higher tolerance for than other people anyway if you've been through that. Number four, video games. And just assume when I'm talking about video games, I'm talking about binge watching, social media, anything that involves you becoming catatonic via an electronic device. Now, I have not yet read a good essay on any of these things. Yes, I know, everybody needs to take a break sometimes. Yes, I know, esports are a thing and students are getting scholarships, and if you're nationally ranked in Super Smash Brothers and you're applying to a school looking to expand its esports program, then go ahead and put all those rankings on the activities list or on the extra space at the end of the application. But don't write about it for your personal essay. Think about it. Colleges are engineering this multi-million-dollar experience on a multi-billion-dollar campus. They want to accept people who are going to take advantage of all those opportunities and not spend 4 years in their dorm room playing video games, getting drunk in a frat basement, or sitting in a dorm room getting high and watching Netflix. I am sorry to be blunt. While we're talking about it, make sure you check your social media pages and see what they say about you. Ask other people what they see and what that says about you. Don't think that just because you can hide your profile from your parents that you can hide it from the admissions officers or anyone else. There have been ongoing surveys about this, and now about a third of the admissions officers report looking at social media pages, and about a third of those instances result in some negative effect on the applicant. So check your pages. All right, so those are my 4 verboten topics, but I also keep a year-by-year list on very common topics. Now, that does not mean that you can't write about these topics. Let me repeat, that does not mean you can't write about these topics. What it does mean is that you have to be aware that everybody and their auntie are writing about these topics, and you're going to have to put in extra effort to make it interesting and particular to you. So here's my list of very common topics in descending order. So, number 7, global warming. Number 6, volunteering. Number 5, travel experiences. Number 4, mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers. Number 3, competitions. Number 2, ethnic or racial identity. And number 1, this is obviously not happened yet, but I'm anticipating it for next year, coronavirus. Again, let me repeat, it doesn't mean that you can't write about these topics, but just be aware of the typical essay in that category and try not to write to type. I'm going to give you some examples. So first, the competition essay. The typical competition essay goes, I was crushed when I didn't win this competition, and then I practiced some more, and then I won, or then I made the team, or then I got the A. For this one, simply remove the external element, the competition, the contest, the tryout, the grade. By removing the external motivation, you're better able to get at your internal motivation for doing whatever you did, whether it was to try for a grade or to play violin for 14 years or whatever that was. So what does your dedication, without that competition or tryout or grade, what does your dedication to that particular activity look like when nobody but you was there to witness it? Okay? What does that look like in private? One of my favorite essays a couple of years ago was by a student who was a top-level pianist. He wrote an essay that began, and I will never forget this first line, I definitely would have been friends with Haydn. And then you learn about the student through the essay, through the imaginary relationships that he's created with all the dead classical composers simply by playing their music. And, obviously, as Mies van der Rohe said, God is in the details. That essay was just, the details were just beautiful in that essay. For the essay about a parent or a grandparent, the typical essay is somebody that you admire. But I remember one student who wrote about her grandmother, and her grandmother was so cruel to this student and to her younger sister. I mean, honestly, I would have stayed away from the grandmother for the rest of my life. But the grandmother had Alzheimer's. And so eventually the grandmother forgot that she had been so cruel to the student in her youth. And the student, with great humility, took care of the grandmother and visited her and built this relationship with what formerly had been a woman who only rejected her. Great essay. Another example, the travel essay. The typical travel essay is, I went to X country, the food was weird, but it expanded my perspective on the world. For this one, I remember a female student. She was raised by a single mother who was a gang specialist in the Chicago Police Department, which is a tough job. And the student herself was just this picture of a strong, independent, confident young woman. Well, on her travel abroad program, she found herself in a host family where the wife was treated absolutely subserviently by the husband and accepted it. And the student actually began the essay by talking about how horrified she was when the husband plopped his bare foot on the wife's lap and told her, not asked her, told her to cut his toenails. And the rest of the essay was of the student and her conversations with this woman, not trying to change her, but genuinely trying to understand this mindset that was very foreign to her. Other students have written essays, I remember, about volunteer experiences, either here or abroad, where maybe the volunteer dynamic developed into this, or devolved into this petty fighting, or the people they were trying to help didn't want them there, or the student they got at the tutoring program made zero improvement, but the student kept showing up anyway, and then they wrote their essay about it. I can go on and on and on with examples. The point is, you can write about these topics. Just be aware that they are common, and try to make your essay as honest and as particular to you as you possibly can, especially if you're writing about these topics. Okay, the last list I have for you with particular topics is a list of qualities that are in short supply in the college application process. So if you have these qualities, you may want to consider including them somehow in your essays. Number 1, resilience. There are students in college now who are unable to even listen to an opinion that contradicts their own opinion. There are students in college right now who rely on their parents to such a degree that they have never had to deal with anything on their own. So if you have more resilience in that, perhaps you should consider incorporating that into your essay in some way. And if you don't have that kind of resilience, I'd like to suggest that you get some because it's very useful. Number 2, a sense of humor. So obviously the tendency with college essays is to take them very seriously because so much depends on the process. Especially, that's how it seems at the beginning. But think about it. If you're writing a personal essay and amputating your sense of humor that's otherwise very much present in your personality, the admissions officer is never going to know the true you. Now, you are not doing stand-up in an essay, and the snarkiness that you use with your friends at lunch is probably not going to translate well. Usually in an essay, humor comes in very subtle ways. So a particular word, like a particular word that you choose, or a self-deprecating phrase that you use, or an aside that might make your friends who know you well roll their eyes and say, "Oh, that's so typically you." So if you have a sense of humor, consider making that part of your essay. If you don't have a sense of humor, again, you might consider getting one because they're very useful. Number 3, humility. Again, there are students who are going to use the personal essay to do a hard sell of their accomplishments and flog themselves like a used car salesman, even though all their accomplishments are already listed elsewhere on the application. This can be a great place for your genuine sense of humility to stand out. And again, if you don't have a sense of humility, I humbly suggest that you get one because they're very useful.